Samantha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. I'm so excited for everyone to get to know you, including me. So, before we sort of jump into all the nitty-gritty stuff, can you tell everyone a bit about yourself and how you went from running one of Australia's most well-known accessory brands, and now you're really stepping into your true calling by going on a different path? So, let us know what the deal is.
Rewind. I was 21 years old and, selling jewelry down at Bondi markets. And just as kind of a side hobby, I was working in retail. And down there got the opportunity, a friend down there had a showroom wall at Australian Fashion Week and said, would you like to take this spot at Fashion Week to sell to Australian retailers? And I was like, oh, this is just a hobby. It's not a real business. Oh, okay, I'll take the spot and, hopefully get some buzz for my market stall. Took the spot, ended up writing $17,000 worth of orders over the 4-day trade show. And, it was kind of really the wake up call of like, this could be something. So I quit my retail job, threw everything I had at building this accessories brand that I ever so modestly named Samantha Wills after myself. And, at 22 years old, really I didn't even really know how to build a brand, but I was naturally quite good at brand building, but then didn't know how to build the infrastructure around the business to support a brand profile like that. So as the brand profile kept building, I just really wasn't capable of kind of putting that structure in, and essentially got myself into $80,000 debt. As synchronicity would have it, and I tell this story in much more detail in my book of Golden Dust, but met my business partner, and with his business mind and my creative one, we went on to have a very commercially creative, successful enterprise. And kind of 15 years into that journey, I had designed over 12,000 pieces of jewelry. And I really explained that process as any creative will relate. I was kind of just designing with my hands, but not my heart. And I think having, being on that journey for 15 years, I felt we had creatively done everything I wanted to do with that brand. And so I made the decision to close the business because I didn't want to give my name away. I wanted to keep my name and kind of the database and the brand equity that we'd built with that brand. So closed the business side of it and kept the brand. And that was at the start of 2019. And since then, I have written a business memoir on that journey that kind of parallels what it means to be a female founder and kind of what you would have seen, be it on Instagram or in the media versus what's really happening behind the scenes to make something like that happen. And then I released a children's book. So now I'm still in the storytelling space, but in a more traditional storytelling space. So I always say first and foremost, I'm a storyteller, and just whatever that vehicle looks like in my creative career at the time.
Oh my gosh. See, this is the kind of stuff that like people don't see. Like, as you're talking about, like behind the scenes is a fucking shit show half the time. Like,
A lot.
we don't know what the hell's going on.
No, and I think in this day and age, we look, at other people's highlight reels, and, that is the point of Instagram, to kind of promote what you're doing and things, but it just doesn't align all the time. You're like, hey, that doesn't look like my journey. So, that there's that real disconnect, but everyone is going through it behind the scenes. It is hard work.
Yeah, and I think people just underestimate just how much work it is and how many hats you're wearing when you're creating something. Like, what was your journey like for you when you were sort of, I guess, flailing around at the start, trying to pick up all these orders and do all these things and thinking about how you're going to position yourself, and like, what do you wish you had have known back then that you know now?
Well, I think I didn't even know what positioning was. In 2004, I was just in hardcore, like naive mode of, seeing, I think, and people say, oh, you're so brave at 21 to start your own business. I'm like, I was just naive. Like if I had knew what was ahead, there's no way I would have done it. So I think, wearing all the different hats, and I tell this story of Golden Dust where, when you're in, I guess, a product business, any business, you kind of, so I would go in and design the product, and then I would go in, Samantha would go in and sell it to the retailer, but then they would kind of be like, oh, I'd go into to send their order out and see that they owe, say $500. And so then I'd have to call them and be like, I'm so sorry, we need to settle this account before we can send the order out. And nothing kills a relationship more, right, than having to ask someone for money. So I was like, how can I get around this? So I was like, I need like a bad cop to my good cop. I couldn't afford to pay anyone. So I was like, I'm just going to make up a fake email. I'm going to call her Renee. So I'll be Samantha. She can be Renee. And so Renee starts emailing out like, hi guys, just chasing up your overdue account. And so Renee gets to work. The cash flow gets a lot better. I then, Samantha, go in selling the collection, and the retailer's like, oh my gosh, that that Renee girl you've got working with you, she's so lovely. I was like, she is. She's really, really nice. And like, gosh, she's a hard worker, isn't she? We get emails from her at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock. I was like, she's got a lot on, okay? She's really busy. So I kind of had, and even when I say, oh, we would send it out, it's such an inherent lie because it was just me. But to answer your question, when you're wearing that many hats, I was, the designer, I was accounts receivable, you're marketing, you're manufacturing, you're doing it all until you kind of find this break in the clouds of how to kind of take that next step forward. But it's really hard and it's overwhelming. And when you're driven by this passion, that's really all that keeps you going on some of those days. So it's a lot.
Yeah, wow, that's genius. That is so genius to make up
Genius
this
or
person.
illegal. Yeah.
I feel like it's super funny. But you know what? You did what you had to do. That's scrappy. That's like just
It
getting
was,
in there, getting shit done.
and then Renee was working out so well and the cash flow was going so well. I was like, do you know what's a real asshole move is Samantha Wills telling the media how great Samantha Wills is. But I was like, you can do it without looking like a total asshole. I was like, Renee can do that. So I was like, now she's like head of accounts receivable, head of marketing. I was like, what a job description. So
Oh my God, that's too funny. I love that. And so I guess when you did come to that point where you're like, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. I really want to step into something that feels more aligned with who I am today. Like, how did your intuition like play a part in that? Have you always been quite spiritual, or what's your sort of views on, I guess, this space?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a very evangelical upbringing and it never sat right with me, but I didn't have the language or the outside understanding of why it didn't. So when I was kind of in my late teens, early adult, when I moved away and out of home, spirituality was always the thing that I was drawn to, but it never looked like the vehicle of religion to me. So when I kind of was able to make my own decisions outside of that, I was like, yeah, this is really what I've kind of always known, but never really known how to put language around. Excuse me. So definitely spirituality. And it turned to, even in our early 20s, my best friend and I'd be like, oh, a sign from the universe. And, oh, it's a sign, and kind of using this really basic language around it. But we didn't even really know what that meant, I think, at the time, but it felt true to us. So I think over the years when, and throughout, and again, I tell this in much more detail in my memoir, but there was these moments from the universe throughout that were just such green lights of guidance. And, I'd kind of be like, oh, it's a sign, rather than, now looking back, I'm like, oh no, that was really intuitive, kind of my intuition meeting this external guidance and following that. And that's when it kind of all started to click into place. But, towards the end of that 15-year journey, I thought it was creative block. So I thought it was like, oh, I've designed so many people, this will pass. I've named this brand after myself. This is kind of what I do. There's no way out of it. I didn't even think that there was an exit because I had named the brand Samantha Wills. So it was kind of, a really come to Jesus kind of conversation with myself, I guess, took about 2 years to realize that, oh, actually, maybe I need to pivot here. Maybe I don't, this creative block's not going away. And so I went up to a mega retreat, which is like a holistic retreat in upstate New York. And I was like, okay, I just need to get clear. Like, am I moving back to Australia? Am I moving the design team to New York? Like I was kind of splitting between the two. And it was just very all consuming by this stage. And I found myself standing at this crossroads on the campus, like a physical crossroads. And there was hardly any cell reception there, but I looked at my phone and my business partner had sent me an email, and the title of the email said, "The business is at a crossroads." And when I received that email, I was standing at this physical crossroads, and I looked up, and in his email, he was very gracious and saying, whatever you decide, the business has to work around you, and we will build that business around you, but you need to make the decision on what that looks like. And I'll give you the time and space, whatever you need to make that decision, but you're the one that has to make it. And so standing at that crossroads, I kind of put my hand on my heart, and I use this word specifically because I felt a voice say, I heard it, but it was more a feeling. And the voice said, it's time to close. And it was as clear and it was as quick and it was as concise as that. And I just was like, it's time to close. It's the first time in 15 years that I've ever thought that was even a possibility. And this crossroad, the road to the left was kind of the main road around campus. And it was, had these beautiful, big, strong pine trees. You could see where the road went. It was the obvious path to take. Then there was the road to the right, which was more a path that kind of was more bark chip. It kind of, you didn't really see where it led, but it looked beautiful. And I just put my hand on my heart. I was like, oh, it's time to close. And I think, when you think about the right side of the brain and that kind of feminine creative side, that's the path to the right.
Mm.
And so making that decision, so obviously a huge decision, didn't just impact me. We had a huge team, we had offices around the world. And so what I did was said to my intuition, like, I'd wake up every morning for 2 weeks without telling anyone and ask myself, how does this feel? I didn't ask myself what I thought about it because I went to the feeling filter, which is to
Mm.
me the intuitive filter. And for every morning for 2 weeks, it felt right. So I pretended that I'd already closed the company and I didn't ask myself what I thought, because if you're putting it through that thinking filter, there's a million logical reasons why you shouldn't close a company that's still in growth, that is highly profitable. But to me, the feeling was right. So I think that's, the intuitive role in that was aligning the crossroads, this physical happening in the physical world, and then this internal feeling. And for me, that's kind of my compass at this point in my life.
Oh my God. I cannot believe you were literally standing at the crossroads when all of this was unfolding. Like that in itself is like the spirit world giving you a big push.
You know what? I think the spirit world was like, oh my God, this girl is not listening to us for 2 years. We've been whispering to her, like, it's time, it's time. And she's like, oh, I don't know, I don't know. So they're like, all right, we're going to place her at this crossroads. We're going to send an email at the crossroads. Then we're going to actually whisper in her ear, it's time to close. And if she doesn't get it, she's on her own then, I think.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad though that you gave yourself the time to be able to feel it out. Because I think we just are so quick in this world to make all these decisions and everything needs to be fast and quick, 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 quick. And I feel like when you allow yourself to actually embody it and feel it and own it, then you just feel so much more confident with like who you are and your decisions and where you're going. Like if you had just gone, oh, we're closing. Like I feel like that you would have just been so in a tizzy and it just would have probably not worked out the way that it
Messy.
did.
Yeah. I do think
Yeah.
that I say this a lot in a lot of my work, like pretend that you've already done it and live in that energy. And how does that feel? Like you can kind of, if we're putting our energy into that situation and really immersing in what that feels like, that's a really good indicator. Because and for me, that there was, even to this day, I have not second guessed closing that brand. It's been the complete right decision. But every single time I do a public speaking engagement or a panel, like people are like, but why? Like and all the questions are around the logic thinking,
Yeah.
analytical. Like it was completely a decision based on feeling, and you can't justify that. And I think that's the thing with intuition, is we're constantly taught throughout life that you need to tangibly justify something. And that's just not how intuition works. You might not be able to justify it in the physical world. And I think that's a really important reminder that that's what we have to go back to.
I agree. It's all about the feeling, the instincts. No one needs to understand your path but you. And I think we
That's
spend so much time explaining, and I used to, like, way back when, I would ask a lot of people, like, I'd have a download, and then I'd be like, what do you reckon if I did that? And I'd ask like five or six different people, and everyone would have a different opinion. And then you'd end up so bloody confused about everything. Did
yeah.
you find that you did that too earlier on?
Oh, I mean, I still do that now. I think it's the human way to want this validation, to go outside of ourselves, to seek this kind of permission. Like it's about having to continually, day to day, minute by minute, return to ourselves to be like, no, I am the only person that can make this decision. Like it's not a conference call. It's something that I have to. And that's why I think moving into that feeling space is so important, because when we're looking for external validations, we're in the thinking space. We're running it through a filter of what society tells us is right, of what, all these things we've onboarded in life. It's going through that filter, whereas you cannot fake a feeling. So going back to that decision making framework is so important. But I don't say that like it's an easy thing to do. I think it's one of the hardest things we'll ever do in life. And it takes a lot of clearing and a lot of unwinding kind of all the tendrils of I'm 43 years old. So there's 43 years of things that you've kind of got to work through to get back to that. And it's hard. That is the work.
Yeah, it is. It's so difficult. And I guess now that you're in a different phase of your life, like you've gone through that transition of letting that business go and stepping into something new and allowing yourself to be more creative and more free, I guess, in how you do things. How do you feel now? Like, have you put things into place that help you ground yourself? And do you have like a different routine to what you used to have when you're in that hustle mode? And I guess now you're in more of that flow. Like, what's changed for you, like day to day, physically?
It's a great question because I'm a really slow learner. So I'd love to sit here and be like, oh, I've learned all this spiritual stuff and I've taken this on board and I'm so much more zen now. It's absolutely not true. Like I still hustle at times because I think for me it was, if I look back creatively, like I had this world-class team around me. So I thrive on the forward idea, the vision, and as a creative director, that's your job, right? To look kind of 18 months to 5 years ahead with the brand. So I'd be like, here's an idea. And then I'd kind of pass it on to the team and they'd make it happen. 9 months later, the collection's in store, we're then shooting. So you're kind of getting these dopamine hits of the next thing. And that's where I thrive. So then when I now still have that idea factory in my head, but I don't have this world-class team. So I kind of just go where I'm like, oh my God, I've got this great idea. And then they're like, yeah, well, what are you going to do about it? Kind of thing. It's kind of like you're responsible now. So I think for me, it's a different framework. I think, it's the messy middle now, whereas before I had the true luxury as a creative to kind of work at that really top level of creative direction and design and ideas. So that has definitely changed. So that's been, and especially with writing, any writer will say it's awful to write, but it's great to have written. Like you have to actually sit down and form this habit that is, there's not a lot of wins along the way. You're in there, you're working story, you're working plot, you're working character. So it's definitely a different pace, and I've been forced to slow down because the process is different. But look, it's I miss the creativeness and I miss doing the jewelry, but I don't miss the scale at which it was done. Like it was such a machine in the end, which is what I wanted. But again, I think it had run its course. So I miss elements of it, but I still know it was the right decision.
Yeah, and I love that you are embracing your new energy and your new reality, I guess. It's hard when you're used to doing things a certain way. Even like my transition from corporate to psychic mediumship, like it's a totally different vibe. Like I'm used to like running with things, like ticking a million things off a day. And if I was like living at that pace again in doing my
Oh my God.
spirituality, I couldn't get any downloads. I would be an absolute disaster. And I have been. Honestly, the last 18 months since I've gone full time,
Yeah.
I was living like my old life, but just trying to throw it into mediumship. And I was working 7 days a week and doing all like 7 readings a day. And I was just absolutely smashing myself because I thought that's what I needed to do in order to be successful because it's all I've ever known. And I feel
Right.
like now I'm like, no, actually, the slower pace, sustainable route is so much better for me in this stage of my life. And it
Uh-huh.
doesn't help me to hustle now. It doesn't. I can't
But
work that way.
knowing that though, there must be some elements. Well, I know for me, there must be some elements in your mind where there's guilt because you're like, oh, I was, you meant to be busy. You're meant to be working 9 to 5 or, 7 days a week. Like that's what we take on board so much. So I think when we do pivot into something new, again, undoing the tendrils of what we've onboarded to be like, oh no, like who said you have to work 5 days a week? Like who was the person that made that? So I think, really finding what that is within ourselves. It might be different for the next person, but to your point, like you've come out of this culture that is so hustle. Like, of course, that's what you know. Like, it makes sense, but it's an undoing.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's undoing the mess. That's what I call it, like
Yeah,
undoing the mess
yeah.
of what you thought was normal. It's
Uh-huh.
really difficult. And like I commend you, like it's not easy to take a chance on yourself. It's not easy to step into the unknown and just, throw caution to the wind and hope something lands. Like it's not easy at all. But I love that you're in a different space in your life now. And I really want to talk about your books. So
Mhm.
like, what are they about? What do people learn from them? What's been the feedback since you've like thrown them out there to the world?
Yeah, so my first book of Golden Dust, which is my memoir around the Samantha Wills Jewelry brand, it had a great response. It was meant to come out in March 2020. Obviously, the world changed and we had this big book
Mm.
tour plan, so we pushed it back a year, which allowed me to kind of not change the ending of it, but I went through a stage 4 endometriosis diagnosis in that time, so I was able to include that in the book. So that felt like a real blessing in hindsight. So that has been received really well. And It really does show the parallel. Like I didn't want it to be just this highlight reel. Like it goes very deep into what it takes as a person. And, when your life is kind of falling apart or relationships are falling apart or, what is happening in your private life and you still have to show up as a business owner. So that's of Golden Dust. My second book is a children's book called Marigold's Magic Stars. And it's about a little girl who's really creative, but her friends are really good at maths and science. So when they get their report cards back, her friends Lily and Daisy say, oh, Lily's very smart at maths and Daisy's really intelligent at science and Marigold's really creative. So she worries she's not smart. So she kind of goes on this journey to discover that you can't spell smart without art. And it's kind of a love letter, not only to my little self, but to kids that creativity is important. Creativity is how we solve problems. Creativity, there is a vocational path. It doesn't, I think so often creatives are told, get your head out of the clouds or there's no career option in that. So I really wanted it to be a love letter to kids that your creativity is important and there is a pathway for you.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I was getting goosebumps as you were telling me that. That's so lovely. And I thought, oh, I wonder if this little girl is like you. So I was
Yeah,
thinking
it
right at the
definitely
start.
is. And there's some Easter eggs through the book of, some of the Samantha Wills jewelry pieces and the wooden boxes and things. So it was a fun project to work on.
Oh, it's beautiful. And like in terms of like what's coming for you now, do you have more creative stories in the pipeline? What's going on with you right now?
So I have the Samantha Wills Institute, which is a foundation for creative entrepreneurs, and we really champion female founders. So it's a lot of resources. There's online programs, mentoring, and things there. And then in my writing work, I'm working on my second children's book. I'm working on a nonfiction concept at the moment, and also my first adult fiction. So kind of have it, and I call it creative roulette because I'm like, if one thing I feel creatively blocked in one thing, I kind of move to the other. So I'm staying in the realm of creativity, but not abandoning ship altogether. So yeah, definitely I think my ADHD mechanism is to take on 70,000 projects. So I really haven't, what I said before, I haven't learned anything about overwhelm and how to calm it down. But I absolutely love it. I love the art of storytelling. I love telling female stories and having female characters at the forefront of stories. So hopefully the next phase is to continue telling stories on page. I'd love to see them adapted for screen and television. So that's kind of the chapter I'm in at the moment.
Meow, 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 meow. Meow, meow. Is Cat 4. Go across to the limeglow.com and buy some of our products. Meow.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that you have all the creative juices flowing. And I agree. I like to have different buckets of things that I'm like doing or interested in because you do sometimes get over stuff. You're like, oh, I've just like spent so much time in that energy. I just can't even look at it anymore. I've got to like shift my focus so that I can get excited about it again. It's so
Absolutely.
smart.
But I think in this center, there's so many distractions. So if you're not staying within that creative realm, you're picking up your phone and you're scrolling or you're, binging something on television, or you're doing all these things that kind of take you out of that. So I think putting that framework in that allows you to kind of move on to the next thing with that little bit of dopamine hit and kind of keeping it within that realm, but without, abandoning the thing altogether.
Yes, I really like that perspective. And look, I need to pick your brain about manifesting because there's a lot of people who would perhaps say, did you manifest this life? And I've heard you say that, manifesting is more than just mood boards and wishful thinking. And what are your views on all of this? And have you manifested this chapter?
The short answer is yes, I think I have. I think, manifesting needs a massive rebrand because I think it has been relegated to this, as you said, mood boards and mod cons. But I really feel like manifesting is, again, stepping into embodying the person that you want to be. So, a writer shouldn't wait for the book deal to call themselves a writer. So you're like, all right, if I want a book deal, I am a writer and I'm going to write every day and I'm going to build that portfolio. Because when we're kind of actively doing this and, working in this active cycle, opportunities are always passing by. And it's when our readiness meets that opportunity, that's the manifest. That's where it kind of locks in. So, I think so often we're like, we put it on a mood board and we hope that that opportunity comes, but it's really the doing. So it's not as romantic and magical as I think manifesting is branded to be. It's about the doing and then trusting that when the opportunity comes along, it might not look like we thought it looked like. So it's about being open and staying open to those green lights. About, you know, it might be 3 steps removed, but it might be an introduction, and then that person's like, oh, have you ever thought of this? And then that person's like, oh, hey, you should come to this event. That's where you meet the opportunity. So staying really open, but being really consistent on what you want to be moving towards underneath. And when all that aligns, that's manifesting.
I agree. I think that there's this, I guess, misconception that you do just write it down and pray to dear God that it happens one day. And I think that it's all those aligned actions in between that help you get to that place where, as you say, you're right where you need to be at the right time for something to fit in and just start to get the momentum. So I'm massive on that too. I'm like, yes, I have plans and yes, I have things I want to do, but I'm definitely not sitting on my hands just waiting for a miracle. Like genuinely.
No, truly. And I think, you know, the worst case scenario is you have the dream and the opportunity comes along, but you're not prepared. And that could, you know, in a writing sense, that would be not having a portfolio ready, not having samples to show. In whatever element you're in, it's about having something ready for when the opportunity comes. You're like, yes, I have this, rather than the opportunity comes and you're like, give me a week to scramble to get it together and the opportunities pass. So yeah, I cannot stress enough that the importance of the doing to what you want to be doing. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be persistent.
Yes, I agree. And I've had so many things, even the last 12 months, where I'm like, oh God, the opportunity's here, the opportunity's here. And I kind of get it. And then it falls through. And I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. I'm like, why did that fall through? I'm like, maybe it's because there's going to be something better. Or like, maybe I'm not ready for that just yet, you know?
For that, or it's the nudge to be like, I'm going to be ready when that comes around again, or when that person calls again, or I know I'm going to see them in 3 months, so I'm going to get ready. Like all of it is the portal to, I just say it's the nut. It's like, pay attention to it. It's there's nothing as a coincidence. I truly, truly believe that.
Me too. Everything is exactly how it's supposed to be in any given moment. You are not in the wrong place. You're not in the wrong space. Everything is happening as it's supposed to. And that gives me a lot of comfort too when things don't work out the way that I thought they were going to. I kind of go, okay, I get more curious about it. Like, ooh, what are you guys doing over there? I'm like, that didn't really work for me. That actually makes me quite upset. And I'm like, but all right, let's do this. Let's do the tango kind of thing.
I love that. But
yes.
I do think it's really important. I think so often, and I was guilty of this for such a long time, holding this one pinhole moment of that's the success point. And so kind of, if that's all we're focused on, all these things are unfolding around us, being like, oh, come look at this, or like make this introduction, or, you know, here's this thing. But we're like, no, there's this black and white version of success. And if I don't hit that pinpoint mark, then I'm a failure. So I think it took me way too long to realize that, of like, oh no, hold the vision tight, but be flexible with how you get there. Because along the way, there's all these things that are nudging you and winking and giving you green lights or amber and red lights along the way to guide you. But to have our eyes up rather than just have our blinkers on looking at that one point is so important to the journey.
And how do you handle like your inner critic, like when your mind is telling you, oh, you are a failure, oh, you're never going to get this, like all the things that I feel like we poison our own minds with every single day. How do you wrangle that?
So imposter syndrome for me has been, I even gave it its own character in my book. It's been such a steadfast, I'm not going to say ally, but very closely to me in my life. And I was spending so much energy trying to battle it and trying to overcome it. And it was just such a waste of exertion for me. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to acknowledge that you're there. But to me, imposter syndrome is really just procrastination and fear, or imposter syndrome on any given day, depending what outfit they're wearing. So they're just trying to get you to stay exactly where you are, because it's designed to keep you know, in primal times, to keep you safe. Don't move. You won't get eaten by an animal if you don't move from this one spot. Yeah. So I say, hey, I see you. Can you just give me 10 minutes to start this task, to do this talk, to XYZ, whatever it is? Because once you start doing it, it quietens down, because its only function is to stop you from starting. So I think knowing that it's going to be there later, you're like, I'll return, I'll be back in a second. But once you start, then you get that momentum without it talking. And I think that was a big thing for me, because over the years, sometimes I just get pinned so deeply beneath it that I couldn't couldn't start the thing. And I think until you start that momentum, it's always going to be whispering there. So we have to, and it's, the language is big when you're like, take the leap of faith, or, dive in the deep end. I'm like, God, that sounds scary. Like, it sounds like you could die if you do any of those things. So I'm like, let's make the language smaller. Let's be like, just take a step, or just take a shuffle, or just take the tiniest movement of momentum, which stops imposter syndrome or fear or procrastination speaking, and then see where that momentum takes you. That's kind of, and that's a daily practice. That's not like, oh, and I broke free of it and I've never heard from them again. I hear from it daily. So it's a daily practice.
I love that analogy. I love that visual that you're giving me there of how we can sort of become our own best friend rather than our own worst enemy.
For yourself, like personify that chatter that is there, and then personify someone that's going into bat for you. And they're all you, but you need to work out which one you want to align with.
Yes, that's beautiful. Okay, before we go into my wife Jade's questions for you, which are super random, what is the best way that people can connect with you?
So on Instagram is at Samantha Wills, and everything is housed at samanthawills.com.
Awesome. Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes so everyone can find you as well. Okay, now for the very strange part. I have 3 random questions. They're really random. Okay, so if Hakuna Matata means no worries, what does Mana Mana by the Muppets mean?
Oh, Mana Mana, I love that. I love the Muppets. Mana Mana means have the best day of your life.
Oh, I love that. That's really sweet. Okay, are dust bunnies house friendly, or do they just shit everywhere?
They shit everywhere.
Facts. I reckon. They're not our friend.
They're not pulling their weight around their house. They're not cute. No, they're shitting in the corner, and you got to clean it up every few days.
I agree. Okay, your final question. Is a pineapple the child of an apple and pine cone, or is it adopted?
It's the child of an apple and a pine cone. And I've never ever thought about that before, but that makes so much sense.
Doesn't it?
But is it born with spikes, or is it born, I think it's born smooth and then its spikes come in like adolescence.
I love that. So funny.
Think about this all day now.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. It has been so amazing to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for facilitating these types of conversations. I think there's such, I'm not even going to say a bridge. I think that the spiritual world and the creative world are so intermeshed. And I think it's just so important, these type of conversations. So thank you so much.
Oh, of course. Thank you. I appreciate that.